My name's John, and this story's about the day my world came crashing down. But before we dive into the chaos, let me introduce you to the key players in this tragic saga. First, there's my wife, Lisa. Lisa and I met in college, and she was everything I'd ever wanted. Smart, funny, beautiful, she had it all. We married young, and our love felt invincible, like nothing could ever come between us. Then there's Emily, our daughter. Emily's 10 years old, a sweet, curious girl who loves books more than anything. She gets that from Lisa, who always has her nose buried in some novel or another. We live in a quiet suburban neighborhood, the kind of place where everyone knows each other. Our house is a cozy 2-story with a white picket fence and a lush garden Lisa takes great pride in. Life here used to be peaceful, a perfect little bubble where nothing bad could ever happen. I work as a software engineer, a job that keeps me busy but provides well for my family. Lisa's a freelance writer working from home, which has always allowed her to be there for Emily. It was an ideal setup, or so I thought. Everything seemed perfect on the surface. But isn't that how it always is? You never see the cracks until they split wide open. It started innocuously enough. Emily was struggling with her math, and Lisa suggested we get her a tutor. Enter Mark, a fresh-faced college student studying to be a teacher. He was enthusiastic, good with kids, and came highly recommended. At 22, he was 10 years younger than Lisa, but age is just a number, right? Mark started coming over twice a week to help Emily. At first, I was grateful. Emily's grades improved, and she seemed happier. Mark fit right in, always staying for dinner after the lessons, laughing with us like he was part of the family. Looking back, I can see the signs I missed, the subtle shifts in Lisa's behavior, the way she'd light up when he arrived. But I was blind, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing just beneath the surface. I was always a bit of a workaholic, putting in long hours to ensure we could maintain our comfortable lifestyle. It never seemed to be an issue before. Lisa understood my drive, or so I believed. I thought we were a team, working together towards the same goals. But maybe I was wrong. Maybe, in my pursuit of providing for them, I missed the most important part, being present. Life continued on this seemingly perfect track, with Mark becoming a fixture in our home. Emily adored him, and Lisa seemed to appreciate having another adult around during the day. It gave her someone to talk to, someone who wasn't me. And I was fine with it. Why wouldn't I be? Trust was never an issue between us, or so I thought. Our house, our neighborhood, our lives, they were all so perfect on the outside. It's funny how you can live in a bubble, thinking everything's great, only to have it burst in the most unexpected ways. I never imagined that inviting Mark into our home would be the beginning of the end for us. But that's the thing about betrayal. It sneaks up on you when you least expect it, turning your world upside down in an instant. So there we were, living our seemingly perfect life. Me, the dedicated husband and father. Lisa, the loving wife and mother. Emily, the bright and innocent child. And Mark, the tutor who would become so much more than just a tutor. I wish I could say I saw it coming, that I had some inkling of the devastation that was about to unfold. But I didn't. I was too caught up in the illusion of our perfect life to see the reality that was about to shatter it all. This is the story of how I discovered my wife's betrayal, and the fallout that ensued. It's a story of love, trust, heartbreak, and ultimately, a journey towards healing. It's not an easy tale to tell, but it's one that needs to be shared. Because sometimes, in the darkest moments, we find the strength we never knew we had. And that's what this story is really about. Finding the light after the darkness, and learning to move forward when everything you thought you knew comes crashing down around you. Looking back, the signs were all there. Maybe it was the way Lisa's laugh changed when Mark was around. Lighter, more carefree. Or perhaps it was the increased frequency of his visits, even when Emily didn't have a session. But I was blind to it, lost in the rhythm of our daily lives, the comforting monotony of our routines. Until one day, something felt off. It was a Saturday morning, and I was working in my home office, surrounded by the familiar hum of my computer and the scent of freshly brewed coffee. Lisa was in the kitchen, humming to herself as she prepared breakfast. Emily was still asleep, her soft snores barely audible through the closed door of her bedroom. Mark was supposed to come over later for Emily's tutoring session. As I typed away, I heard Lisa's phone buzz on the counter. She picked it up quickly, and the humming stopped. I glanced over, curious, but she turned away, her voice hushed as she responded to the message. "Who's that?" I asked, trying to keep my tone casual. "Just a friend," she replied, her back still turned to me. "Nothing important." But something in her voice made my skin prickle. It was the first time I'd felt that tiny seed of doubt, though I quickly brushed it aside. Lisa had friends, and I trusted her. There was no reason not to, or so I thought. As the days passed, that seed of doubt grew. Lisa seemed more distracted, often lost in thought. She'd spend more time on her phone, and there were moments when I'd catch a fleeting look of guilt on her face. But whenever I asked, she'd dismiss my concerns with a wave of her hand and a reassuring smile. "You're being silly, John," she'd say, laughing it off, and I'd force myself to believe her. Then there were the changes in her appearance. Lisa had always been beautiful, but lately, she'd started paying more attention to her looks. New clothes, more makeup, and a different perfume. When I mentioned it, she shrugged and said she just wanted to feel good about herself. I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her. The turning point came one evening when I returned home from work earlier than usual. As I walked through the door, I heard Lisa and Mark talking in the living room. Their voices were low, almost conspiratorial. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was unmistakable. My heart pounded in my chest as I quietly moved closer, straining to hear. "Do you think he suspects anything?" Mark's voice was tense, filled with worry. "I don't know," Lisa replied, her voice trembling. "But we have to be careful. If he finds out—" I couldn't listen anymore. My world spun, and I felt like the ground had been pulled out from under me. I stumbled back, knocking over a vase in the process. The crash echoed through the house, and Lisa and Mark rushed into the hallway, their faces pale. "John, what are you doing home so early?" Lisa asked, her voice strained but trying to sound casual. I wasn't feeling well," I lied, forcing a smile. "Just wanted to come home and rest." Lisa's eyes searched mine, and for a moment I thought she could see the doubt and suspicion swirling within me. But she quickly looked away, turning her attention back to Mark. "Well, Mark was just leaving," she said, her voice a bit too cheerful. "Well, continue Emily's session another time." Mark mumbled a goodbye and hurried out, avoiding my gaze. I watched him leave, my mind racing. What was I supposed to do? Confront Lisa? Demand answers? But part of me was too afraid of what I might uncover. That night, as we lay in bed, I couldn't sleep. Lisa was beside me, her breathing slow and even, as if nothing was wrong. But for me, everything had changed. The seed of doubt had taken root, and I knew I had to find out the truth, no matter how much it might hurt. So I started paying closer attention, watching for any signs that might confirm my suspicions. In the weeks that followed, I became hyper-aware of Lisa's every move. I'd check her phone when she wasn't looking, search for any clues that might reveal the truth. But she was careful, too careful. I found nothing concrete, just vague messages and half-formed suspicions. It was driving me mad. One evening, while Lisa was out shopping, I decided to go through her emails. I felt like a spy, my hands shaking as I scrolled through her inbox. Most of it was harmless, but then I found an email chain with Mark. They were discussing Emily's tutoring sessions, but there was a familiarity in their tone, an intimacy that made my stomach churn. I needed more proof, something undeniable. My chance came a few days later when Lisa mentioned she was meeting a friend for lunch. She seemed nervous, almost as if she was daring me to question her. I played along, pretending to believe her story. As soon as she left, I grabbed my coat and followed her. I felt like a detective in a noir film, shadowing her car through the winding streets of our neighborhood. She drove to a small cafe on the outskirts of town, a place we'd never been to before. I parked a safe distance away and watched as she walked inside. A few minutes later, Mark arrived. My heart sank. There it was, the confirmation I dreaded. They sat at a corner table, leaning in close, their faces animated as they talked. I snapped a few photos with my phone, my hands trembling. This was it, the proof I needed. I drove home in a daze, my mind racing with thoughts of betrayal and anger. How could she do this to me? To us? I felt like a fool, blind to the truth that had been right in front of me. But now I knew, and there was no turning back. I had to confront Lisa, to hear her side of the story, even if it shattered me. The confrontation was inevitable, a storm brewing on the horizon, and as much as I dreaded it, I knew it was the only way to find out the truth and decide what to do next. I just hoped I had the strength to face it. The days following my discovery at the cafe were a blur of anger and heartbreak. Every interaction with Lisa felt like a cruel joke, a reminder of the betrayal festering beneath the surface. I couldn't look at her without seeing the image of her and Mark, their heads bent close together, sharing secrets I was never meant to hear. I knew I had to confront her, but I needed more than just photos. I needed undeniable proof that would force her to tell the truth. I decided to install a small camera in our living room, hidden among the books on the shelf. It felt invasive, a betrayal of trust in its own right. But the stakes were too high. Every day I checked the footage, hoping to catch something, anything that would confirm my suspicions. The waiting was agony, each moment stretching into an eternity. Then, one Friday afternoon, it happened. I was at work, staring blankly at my computer screen, when my phone buzzed with a notification. The camera had detected movement. My heart raced as I opened the app and watched the live feed. There they were, Lisa and Mark, sitting on the couch. They weren't tutoring Emily. They were alone. I turned up the volume, straining to hear their conversation. It was muffled at first, just snippets of words and laughter. But then, Lisa's voice came through clear as day, tinged with a mix of fear and excitement. "Mark, we need to be more careful. John's been acting strange lately. I think he suspects something." Mark sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I know, Lisa, but what are we supposed to do? We can't keep sneaking around like this forever." Lisa leaned in closer, her hand resting on his knee. "I don't know. I just VJK. I can't bear the thought of hurting him, but I can't stop seeing you either." My blood boiled as I listened to their conversation. They were talking about me, about their affair, as if it were some high school drama. The casual way they discussed my feelings, my suspicions, made my stomach turn. I couldn't watch anymore. I shut off the feed and buried my face in my hands, trying to control the rage bubbling up inside me. I left work early, driving home in a daze. I had all the proof I needed, but the thought of confronting Lisa terrified me. What would she say? Would she deny it, try to twist the truth? Or would she admit everything, leaving me to pick up the pieces of our shattered life? When I got home, the house was eerily quiet. Lisa was in the kitchen, humming softly as she prepared dinner. The normalcy of it all made my skin crawl. How could she act like everything was fine when she was betraying me behind my back? I walked into the kitchen, my footsteps heavy. "We need to talk," I said, my voice strained. Lisa looked up, her eyes widening in surprise. "John, you're home early. Is everything okay?" "No," I replied, struggling to keep my voice steady. "Everything is not okay. I know about you and Mark." Her face paled, and she dropped the knife she was holding. "What are you talking about?" she stammered, but I could see the fear in her eyes. "I saw you," I said, my voice rising. "I heard you talking. You think I wouldn't notice? You think I'm that stupid?" Tears welled up in her eyes and she shook her head. "John, please, let me explain." "Explain what?" I shouted, my anger boiling over. "Explain how you've been lying to me, betraying me." "How long has this been going on, Lisa? How long have you been seeing him?" She collapsed onto the floor, sobbing. "I'm so sorry, John. It started a few months ago. I never meant for it to go this far. I was lonely, and Mark V. DJ'd Slush. He was there. He listened to me, made me feel special, but I never wanted to hurt you. I never wanted you to find out." Her words cut through me like a knife. I wanted to scream, to rage, to throw things, but I couldn't. I just stood there, numb, as she cried on the kitchen floor. "Why, Lisa?" I whispered, my voice breaking. "Why did you do this to us?" She looked up at me, her eyes filled with guilt and sorrow. "I don't know, John. I was lonely, and you were always so busy with work. I felt invisible, like I didn't matter anymore. Mark made me feel alive again, but it was a mistake. I know that now. Please, give me a chance to make things right." I shook my head, the weight of her betrayal pressing down on me. "I don't know if I can, Lisa. I don't know if I'll ever be able to trust you again." She reached out to me, her hand trembling. "John, please, I love you. I don't want to lose our family." I stepped back, avoiding her touch, I need time to think, I said, my voice hollow. I need to be alone. I turned and walked out of the kitchen, leaving her sobbing on the floor. I went upstairs to our bedroom, closing the door behind me. I felt like I was suffocating, the walls closing in around me. Everything I thought I knew about my life, my marriage, had been shattered in an instant. I sat on the edge of the bed, my mind racing. What was I supposed to do now? Could our marriage be saved, or was it too late? The thought of forgiving Lisa, of trying to rebuild our trust, felt impossible. But the thought of losing her, of tearing our family apart, was equally unbearable. I knew I couldn't make any decisions right away. I needed time to process everything, to figure out what I really wanted. All I knew was that my life would never be the same again. The trust that had once been the foundation of our marriage was gone, and I didn't know if it could ever be rebuilt. The night was long and sleepless, filled with the echoes of Lisa's sobs and my own silent tears. I felt like I was trapped in a nightmare, unable to wake up. But as the first light of dawn broke through the window, I knew one thing for certain. No matter what happened next, my life had been irrevocably changed. The following days were a haze of uncertainty and tension. Lisa and I barely spoke, the weight of our unspoken words hanging heavy in the air. I found myself drifting through the motions of daily life, my mind constantly replaying the confrontation in the kitchen. Emily seemed to sense something was wrong, but she didn't ask, and for that, I was grateful. I couldn't bear the thought of explaining this mess to her. One evening, I decided it was time to confront Mark directly. I needed answers from him, to hear his side of the story, even though I dreaded what he might say. I texted him, asking if we could meet. His reply was immediate, agreeing to meet at a local coffee shop. I didn't tell Lisa. This was something I needed to do alone. The coffee shop was nearly empty when I arrived. I spotted Mark sitting at a corner table, looking nervous. His eyes widened when he saw me, and he stood up, awkwardly extending his hand. I ignored it, sitting down across from him. For a moment, we just stared at each other, the silence stretching between us. Finally, I spoke. "How long has this been going on, Mark?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "About 6 months," he admitted. "It started out innocently enough. We were just talking, getting to know each other. But then, it escalated." I clenched my fists under the table, trying to keep my anger in check. "Why? Why did you do it?" Mark looked genuinely remorseful. "I never meant for it to happen, John. I respect you. I like you. But Lisa, she was lonely. She needed someone. And I was there. It was a mistake. A huge mistake. Do you love her?" The words tasted bitter in my mouth. He hesitated, then shook his head. "No. I care about her, but it's not love. I don't want to come between you two. I never did." I leaned back, taking a deep breath. "You have. You've destroyed everything." "I know," he said quietly. "And I'm sorry. I really am. If I could take it back, I would. Does it mean anything to you? Any of it?" My voice wavered, the rawness of my emotions threatening to spill over. Mark looked down, his expression pained. "It did, at first. But now I just feel guilty. I never wanted to hurt you. I never wanted this." For a moment, I believed him. His remorse seemed genuine, and a part of me wanted to forgive him, to let go of the anger. But the damage was done. The betrayal was too deep. "I don't know what to do," I confessed, my voice barely above a whisper. Mark looked up, his eyes meeting mine. "You need to talk to her, John. Really talk to her. Figure out if this is something you can get past. I don't want to be the reason your marriage ends." I nodded, the weight of his words settling on my shoulders. "You're right. I need to talk to Lisa." We sat in silence for a few moments longer, the gravity of the situation pressing down on us both. Then, without another word, I stood up and left the coffee shop, leaving Mark alone with his guilt. When I got home, Lisa was waiting for me. She looked exhausted, her eyes red from crying. "Where have you been?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I went to see Mark," I replied, watching her reaction carefully. She flinched, her face crumpling. "Oh, John, I'm so sorry." I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. "We need to talk, Lisa, really talk." We sat down in the living room, the tension between us palpable. For a moment, neither of us spoke, the silence heavy and suffocating. Finally, I broke the silence. "Why, Lisa? Why did you do it?" She looked down at her hands, her voice barely a whisper. "I was lonely, John. You were always so busy with work, and I felt like I didn't matter anymore. Mark was there. He listened to me. He made me feel special." I clenched my jaw, trying to keep my emotions in check. "Do you love him?" She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "No, it wasn't about love. It was about feeling wanted, feeling alive. But it was a mistake, John, a terrible mistake. I love you. I don't want to lose you." Her words tore at my heart. Part of me wanted to believe her, to forgive her and move on. But another part of me, the part that was still raw and angry, couldn't let go of the betrayal. "I don't know if I can ever trust you again," I said, my voice breaking. "How am I supposed to get past this?" Lisa reached out, her hand trembling. "I don't know, John. But I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make it right. Counseling, therapy, whatever you need. Just please, don't give up on us." I looked at her, the woman I had loved for so many years, and felt a surge of conflicting emotions. Anger, betrayal, sadness, and a glimmer of hope. Could we rebuild what was broken? Could we find a way back to each other? "I need time," I said finally. "Time to think. Time to figure out if this is something I can get past." Lisa nodded, her eyes filled with tears. "Take all the time you need, John. I'll be here waiting, hoping that we can find a way to move forward together." I stood up, feeling the weight of the decision ahead of me. "I'm going to stay at a hotel for a few days. I need some space." She didn't argue, just nodded, her face a mask of sorrow. "I understand. I love you, John." I didn't respond. I couldn't. I grabbed a few things and left the house, the place that had once been my sanctuary, now a battleground of emotions. As I drove to the hotel, I felt a strange sense of relief. For the first time since discovering the affair, I felt like I had taken a step towards finding clarity. The next few days were a whirlwind of emotions. I met with a therapist, pouring out my heart to a stranger in a desperate attempt to make sense of the chaos. I spoke with close friends, seeking their advice and support, and I thought about Lisa, about our life together and the future that now seemed so uncertain. On the third day, I called Lisa. "Let's meet," I said. "We need to talk about the future." We met at a quiet park, away from the prying eyes of neighbors and friends. As we sat on a bench, the sound of children playing in the background, I looked at her, searching for the woman I had fallen in love with all those years ago. "I've been thinking a lot," I began, my voice steady. "About us, about our marriage, and I need to know if you're truly committed to making this work." She looked at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of hope and fear. "I am, John. I swear I am. I'll do whatever it takes." "Then we start with counseling," I said firmly, "both together and individually. We need to rebuild our trust, and that won't happen overnight." She nodded eagerly. "Whatever it takes, John, you'll do it." "And Mark," I continued, my voice hardening, "he's out of our lives. Completely. No contact, no excuses." "Of course," she agreed, her voice trembling. "I'll end it. I promise." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision lifting slightly. "Okay, Lisa, we'll try. But know this, it's going to be a long, hard road. And if I ever feel like I can't do it, like the trust is gone for good, then we end it. Agreed?" She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Agreed." As we stood up to leave, I felt a mixture of hope and trepidation. The road ahead would be difficult, filled with challenges and painful moments. But for the sake of our family, for the love we once shared, I was willing to try. We walked back to the car in silence, the weight of our decisions settling over us. It wouldn't be easy, and there were no guarantees. But it was a start. And sometimes, that's all you can ask for. The following weeks were a whirlwind of counseling sessions and emotional confrontations. Lisa and I bared our souls to the therapist, each session peeling back layers of pain, guilt, and resentment. Despite her genuine remorse, every apology felt like a dagger twisting deeper into the wounds she had inflicted. I wanted to forgive her, to rebuild our life together, but my anger kept simmering just beneath the surface. One evening, after another exhausting session, I found myself sitting alone in the living room, the weight of everything pressing down on me. I couldn't shake the feeling of humiliation, being made a fool in my own home. The more I thought about it, the more the anger grew, morphing into a burning desire for retribution. If Lisa and Mark had thought they could get away with betraying me, they were sorely mistaken. I started by gathering all the evidence I had, the photos, the recorded conversations, the emails. I compiled everything into a meticulously organized folder, ensuring that nothing was left out. I knew I needed to tread carefully. This wasn't just about satisfying my need for revenge. It was about ensuring that Lisa and Mark faced the consequences of their actions. The next step was to send an anonymous tip to the school board. Mark was a tutor employed by the school, and his relationship with Lisa, a parent, could be seen as highly inappropriate, potentially jeopardizing his career. I sent the emails, the photos, and the recordings, painting a clear picture of their illicit affair. I knew it was a petty move, but the thought of Mark losing his job gave me a grim sense of satisfaction. Then, I turned my attention to Lisa. I knew she valued her reputation and standing in the community. Exposing her affair could shatter the carefully crafted image she had built. I started by leaking the information to a few trusted friends, ensuring the news would spread like wildfire. Within days, whispers and rumors began circulating, and Lisa's social standing took a severe hit. I watched as she faced the fallout, her friends distancing themselves, the cold stares at the grocery store, the subtle but painful rejections. But it wasn't enough. The humiliation she and Mark had put me through demanded more. I decided to confront Mark directly, not in a quiet coffee shop, but in a way that would leave a lasting impact. I found out he frequented a local gym and planned my encounter. The gym was crowded when I walked in, the air filled with the sounds of clanging weights and grunts of exertion. I spotted Mark in the weight area, lifting dumbbells, oblivious to my presence. I approached him, my heart pounding with a mix of adrenaline and fury. "Mark!" I called out, my voice cutting through the noise. He looked up, his face paling when he saw me. "John, what are you doing here?" "I came to talk," I said, keeping my voice low and controlled. "About Lisa." Mark set down the weights, his hands shaking. "John, I already told you I'm sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen." "Sorry doesn't cut it," I replied, stepping closer. "You think you can just waltz into my life, betray me, and walk away unscathed?" He swallowed hard, his eyes darting around, looking for an escape. "What do you want from me?" "I want you to understand what you've done," I said, my voice cold. "I want you to feel the consequences of your actions." Before he could respond, I lunged at him, shoving him hard against the weight rack. The clatter of falling weights drew the attention of everyone in the gym. Mark stumbled, trying to regain his footing, but I was relentless. I grabbed his collar, pulling him close. "You destroyed my life!" I hissed, my voice trembling with rage. "You think you can just say sorry and make it all better?" He struggled against my grip, panic in his eyes. "John, please, don't do this. I'm begging you." I let go of him, shoving him away in disgust. He fell to the floor, gasping for breath. The gym staff rushed over, pulling me away, demanding an explanation. I didn't resist. I had made my point. As they escorted me out, I glanced back at Mark, seeing the fear and humiliation on his face. It was a small victory, but it felt hollow. Back home, I found Lisa sitting in the living room, her eyes red from crying. "John, what have you done?" she asked, her voice breaking. "I did what I had to," I replied, my tone flat. "I made sure Mark understands the consequences of his actions." Tears streamed down her face. "This isn't the way, John. We were supposed to work through this together." "I tried," I said, my voice rising. "I tried to forgive, to move on, but every time I look at you, all I see is the betrayal." "Do you have any idea what you've done to me?" she sobbed, covering her face with her hands. "I'm so sorry, John. I never meant for any of this to happen. I just wanted to feel something." "And now you do," I said coldly. "You feel the pain, the humiliation, just like I did." Lisa looked up at me, her eyes filled with a mix of sorrow and anger. "What's next, John? Are you going to destroy me too?" I stared at her, the woman I had once loved more than anything, and felt a pang of regret. But it was quickly swallowed by the anger that had fueled my actions. "No, Lisa. This ends here. But know this. Our marriage is over. You destroyed it the moment you betrayed me." She nodded, her shoulders shaking with sobs. "I understand," I deserve this. All of it. I turned and walked out of the room, leaving her to her grief. The sense of satisfaction I'd hoped to feel was replaced by a deep, hollow emptiness. Revenge had brought no peace, no closure. It had only deepened the chasm between us, making it clear that our marriage was beyond saving. The following days were a blur. Lisa and I began the process of separating our lives, the house that once felt like a home, now just a battleground of memories. Emily sensed the tension, and I did my best to shield her from the worst of it. But children are perceptive, and she knew something was terribly wrong. One evening, as I tucked her into bed, she looked up at me with wide, tear-filled eyes. "Daddy, are you and Mommy going to be okay?" I swallowed hard, my heart pounding in my chest. I did something I'm not proud of, I admitted. After I found out about you and Alex, I wanted to hurt him. I wanted him to feel the same pain I was feeling. Her eyes widened in shock, but she didn't interrupt. She waited, giving me the space to continue. "I found out who his clients were, and I sent them the video of you two," I said, my voice trembling. "I ruined his reputation. He's lost his clients, his work. I wanted revenge, and I took it." Claire stared at me, her eyes filled with a mix of emotions, shock, sadness, and something else I couldn't quite place. She didn't say anything for a long time, and I felt the silence stretch between us, heavy and suffocating. Finally, she spoke, her voice soft and measured. "Mark, I understand why you did it. I hurt you, and you wanted to hurt him in return. But revenge doesn't solve anything. It only makes things worse." I nodded, feeling a tear slip down my cheek. "I know," I said, my voice breaking. "I regret it, Claire. It didn't make me feel better. It just made me feel worse." She reached out, taking my hand in hers. "We've both made mistakes," she said gently. "But if we want to move forward, we need to let go of the past. We need to focus on healing, together." I looked at her, feeling a flicker of hope amidst the guilt and pain. "I want that too," I said, my voice filled with emotion. "I want to heal, with you." As we sat there, holding hands and watching the sun dip below the horizon, I felt a sense of peace for the first time in weeks. The road ahead would be long and difficult, but for the first time, I felt that we might actually make it through. Together, we could find a way to heal, to rebuild, and to create a new beginning. Despite our efforts to move forward, the trust between Claire and me remained fragile. Every day felt like walking on a tightrope, with the past threatening to pull us back into the abyss of mistrust and betrayal. We continued with our counseling sessions, but the tension between us was palpable. The process of healing was slow and arduous, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something had to give. One evening, as Claire and I sat down for dinner, she broached a subject that I had been avoiding. "Mark," she began hesitantly, "we need to talk about our future, about what happens next." I looked at her, my fork paused mid-air. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice guarded. She took a deep breath, her eyes meeting mine with a mix of determination and sorrow. "I think we need to consider the possibility of separation," she said softly. "We've been trying so hard to make this work, but it feels like we're just going through the motions. Maybe some time apart would help us gain perspective." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I knew things weren't perfect, but I hadn't expected her to suggest separation. "Are you saying you want a divorce?" I asked, my voice trembling. She shook her head quickly. "No, not necessarily. I'm saying we need to take a step back, to reevaluate what we really want. I love you, Mark, but I don't want us to keep hurting each other." I sat back in my chair, the weight of her words sinking in. As much as it pained me to admit it, she was right. We were stuck in a cycle of hurt and mistrust, and it was tearing us apart. "Okay," I said finally. "Maybe a separation would be good for us, but we need to be clear about what that means and what our goals are." Over the next few days, we worked out the details. Claire would stay in the house, while I would find a temporary place to stay. We agreed to continue counseling separately, giving each other the space to work through our emotions independently. It was a painful decision, but it felt like the right one. We needed to find ourselves again before we could find our way back to each other. I moved out at the end of the week, settling into a small apartment not far from our home. The first night was the hardest. The silence was deafening, and I felt the absence of Claire's presence acutely. But I knew this was necessary. We both needed to heal, and sometimes healing required distance. As the weeks passed, I focused on rebuilding my life. I threw myself into work, taking on new projects and responsibilities to keep my mind occupied. I reconnected with friends, who were a constant source of support and encouragement. And I continued my individual counseling sessions, delving deep into my own feelings and fears. Claire and I kept in touch, mostly through text messages and occasional phone calls. The distance helped to ease some of the tension, and our conversations, though infrequent, were more civil and thoughtful. We both knew that this separation was a chance for us to grow, to figure out what we really wanted from our relationship and from each other. My heart broke at her innocent question. "We're going through a tough time right now, sweetheart. But no matter what happens, both Mommy and I love you very much," she nodded, sniffling. "I don't want you to fight anymore." I kissed her forehead, holding her close. "I know, sweetie. We'll do our best." As I left her room, I felt the weight of my choices pressing down on me. Revenge had only served to deepen the wounds, and now I had to face the consequences. I knew it was time to move forward, to find a way to heal, for Emily's sake if not for my own. Lisa and I met with our lawyers to discuss the terms of our separation. The process was painful, each decision a reminder of the life we had built together, and the betrayal that had torn it apart. But amidst the pain, there was a glimmer of hope, the possibility of a new beginning, a chance to rebuild my life from the ashes of the past. As the weeks turned into months, I focused on creating a stable environment for Emily. I threw myself into my work, finding solace in the familiarity of my routines, and slowly, ever so slowly, I began to heal. One afternoon, as I picked Emily up from school, she looked up at me with a smile. "Daddy, can we go to the park today?" I smiled back, feeling a warmth I hadn't felt in a long time. "Of course, sweetheart." We spent the afternoon playing, laughing, and for a few precious hours, the weight of the past seemed to lift. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was a start. As I watched Emily run and play, I realized that revenge had been a distraction, a way to avoid facing the deeper pain of betrayal. But it was time to let go, to focus on the future. For Emily, for myself, and for the possibility of finding happiness again. In that moment, I made a silent promise to myself. I would move forward, not with anger or bitterness, but with a determination to rebuild my life. It wouldn't be easy, and the scars would always remain. But I owed it to Emily, and to myself, to try. As the sun set over the park, casting a warm glow over the playground, I felt a sense of peace. It was a small step, but it was the first step towards a new beginning, and that was enough for now. With the decision to move forward, the legal process of untangling our lives began in earnest. The first step was formalizing our separation. We met with our respective lawyers in a sterile conference room, the air thick with tension. Lisa looked exhausted, her face etched with sorrow. I felt a pang of sympathy, but quickly reminded myself of why we were here. Our lawyers laid out the terms: division of assets, custody arrangements for Emily, alimony. It was all so clinical, so detached from the emotional turmoil swirling inside me. The house, the one we'd built our lives in, was to be sold. The proceeds would be split evenly. Lisa would keep her car, and I'd keep mine. We both agreed that Emily's well-being was our top priority, and we wanted to make the transition as smooth as possible for her. Custody was a more complicated matter. We both wanted to be a significant part of Emily's life. After hours of discussion and negotiation, we agreed on joint custody. Emily would spend alternating weeks with each of us. It wasn't perfect, but it was the best solution we could find given the circumstances. The matter of alimony was another point of contention. Lisa had been a freelance writer, working from home, while I had been the primary breadwinner. Despite everything, I didn't want to see her struggle financially. We agreed on a temporary alimony arrangement to help her get back on her feet. Our lawyers finalized the details, and with heavy hearts, we signed the papers. Leaving the lawyer's office, I felt a mixture of relief and sadness. The legal formalities were over, but the emotional journey was just beginning. I went back to the house, now filled with empty spaces where our shared memories had once lived. Lisa and I worked together, packing up our belongings, dividing the furniture and household items. It was a silent, somber process, each item a reminder of what we had lost. As we sorted through the remnants of our life together, we stumbled upon an old photo album. It was filled with pictures of happier times, our wedding, vacations, Emily's birth. Lisa picked it up, her eyes filling with tears. "Do you want to keep this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, I think I do." She handed it to me, her fingers lingering on the cover for a moment. "I'm sorry, John," she said softly. "For everything." I looked at her, seeing the depth of her regret. "I know you are, Lisa, and I'm sorry too, but we need to move on." With the house finally emptied of our shared past, we put it on the market. It sold quickly, the memories it held no longer ours to keep. The final step was closing the sale and splitting the proceeds. It felt like the end of an era, the closing of a chapter that had once seemed unending. During this time, I continued to see a therapist, working through the tangled web of emotions. The sessions were painful but necessary, helping me to process the anger, the betrayal, and the lingering love I still felt for Lisa. I needed to let go of the past to make room for a future, whatever that might hold. One day, while I was at the therapist's office, my lawyer called. "John, I have some news," she said. "Lisa's lawyer has proposed an expedited divorce process. They want to finalize everything as soon as possible." I felt a jolt of surprise. Why the rush? "Lisa wants to move out of state," she explained. "She's found a job opportunity and believes a fresh start would be best for her and Emily." The thought of Lisa leaving, taking Emily with her, sent a wave of panic through me. "I don't want her to take Emily away," I said, my voice tight. "We can negotiate the terms," my lawyer assured me. "Given the joint custody arrangement, it would be difficult for her to move Emily without your consent, but we need to act quickly." I agreed to the expedited process, determined to protect my rights as Emily's father. The next few weeks were a blur of legal meetings and negotiations. In the end, we reached a compromise. Lisa could take the job out of state, but Emily would stay with me during the school year and spend holidays and summers with her mother. It wasn't ideal, but it was the best solution for everyone involved. The day of the final divorce hearing arrived, and I felt a strange mix of emotions: relief, sadness, and a faint glimmer of hope. Lisa and I sat on opposite sides of the courtroom, our lawyers by our sides. The judge reviewed the paperwork, asking a few questions to confirm our agreement. Then, with a final stroke of the pen, it was done. Our marriage was officially over. Walking out of the courtroom, I felt a profound sense of loss. But there was also a sense of closure, a finality that allowed me to begin the process of healing. Lisa and I shared a brief, tearful goodbye. "Take care of Emily," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "I will," I promised, my heart aching with the weight of our shared history. Life after the divorce was a series of adjustments. Emily and I settled into a new routine, finding comfort in the stability of our shared time together. I threw myself into my work, finding solace in the familiar rhythms of my job. But there were moments of loneliness, times when the emptiness of the house felt overwhelming. One evening, after putting Emily to bed, I sat down with a glass of whiskey, letting the warmth seep through me. I picked up the photo album Lisa had given me, flipping through the pages. The images were a poignant reminder of the life we had shared, the dreams we had built together. But they were also a testament to the strength it took to let go and move forward. As I sat there, I realized that the anger and desire for revenge had been replaced by a deeper understanding. Lisa had made mistakes, as had I, but we were both trying to move on, to find a new path. And in that realization, I found a sense of peace. I continued to focus on Emily, ensuring she felt loved and supported. We spent weekends exploring new parks, visiting museums, and just enjoying each other's company. Her laughter became a source of healing, a reminder that life, despite its hardships, still held moments of joy. With time, I began to open myself up to the possibility of new relationships. I joined a few social groups, reconnected with old friends, and even went on a few dates. It was a slow process, filled with awkward moments and tentative steps. But each experience taught me something about myself, about what I wanted and needed in a partner. One day, while attending a friend's barbecue, I met Sarah. She was warm, kind, and had a smile that lit up the room. We started talking, and I found myself drawn to her genuine interest and easy laughter. Over the next few weeks, we spent more time together, our connection growing stronger with each passing day. Sarah knew about my past, about the pain and betrayal I had endured, but she didn't judge me. Instead, she offered understanding and support, helping me to see that there was life beyond the shadows of my failed marriage. As our relationship deepened, I realized that I was ready to let go of the past fully. Lisa and I remained in contact for Emily's sake, but our interactions became less charged, more focused on co-parenting. There were still moments of tension, but they were overshadowed by the progress we had both made. One afternoon, while Sarah and I were taking a walk in the park, she turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "John, I know your journey hasn't been easy, but I want you to know that I'm here for you, whatever comes next." I looked at her, feeling a warmth and affection that had been missing for so long. "Thank you, Sarah. I appreciate that more than you know." As we continued our walk, I felt a sense of hope and possibility. The legal battles, the anger, the desire for revenge VDJ, they were all behind me now. What lay ahead was a new beginning, a chance to build a life filled with love, trust, and happiness. The journey wasn't over, but I had taken the first steps toward a brighter future. And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly at peace. As the weeks turned into months, I settled into my new life with Emily and Sarah. The shadows of the past began to recede, replaced by the warmth of new memories and the promise of a fresh start. It wasn't always easy, but with each passing day, I felt more like myself again, more in control of my destiny. Emily adjusted to our new routine remarkably well. She split her time between me and Lisa, and while the transition was challenging, she seemed to thrive. We had long talks about her feelings, her fears, and her hopes for the future. I did my best to reassure her that, no matter what happened, she was loved and supported. One sunny Saturday afternoon, Sarah and I took Emily to a local fair. The air was filled with the scent of cotton candy and popcorn, the sounds of laughter and carnival games creating a festive atmosphere. Emily's eyes sparkled with excitement as she raced from one ride to the next, her laughter infectious. As I watched her, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. Despite everything that had happened, despite the pain and betrayal, I had come out the other side stronger, more resilient, and I had found love again, a love that was genuine and real. Sarah squeezed my hand, her smile warm and reassuring. "You're doing a great job with Emily," she said softly. "She adores you." I smiled back, my heart swelling with affection. "Thanks, Sarah. I couldn't have done it without you." Later that evening, after Emily had fallen asleep, Sarah and I sat on the porch, sipping wine and watching the stars. It was a clear night, the sky a canvas of twinkling lights. I felt a sense of peace, a contentment that had eluded me for so long. "Do you ever think about the future?" Sarah asked, her voice thoughtful. "All the time," I replied, my gaze fixed on the stars. "I think about what I want for Emily, for us. I want a life filled with love and happiness, free from the shadows of the past." She nodded, her hand finding mine. "I want that too, and I believe we can have it." As I looked into her eyes, I knew she was right. The future was a blank canvas, and together we could paint a beautiful picture. It wouldn't be without challenges, but with love and determination, we could overcome anything. The months continued to pass, and our life together grew richer, more fulfilling. Emily excelled in school, her confidence blossoming. Sarah and I grew closer, our bond deepening with each shared experience. We took trips together, explored new hobbies, and spent quiet evenings at home, enjoying the simple pleasures of life. One evening, as we sat around the dinner table, Emily looked up at me with a serious expression. "Daddy, do you think we'll always be this happy?" I reached across the table, taking her hand. "I think happiness is something we have to work at every day, Emily. There will be tough times, but as long as we support each other and keep moving forward, we can find happiness." She smiled, her eyes shining with trust. "I believe you, Daddy." That night, after tucking Emily into bed, I sat with Sarah on the porch, reflecting on her question. It had been a long, hard road to get here, but I had learned so much about myself, about resilience, and about the power of love. Do you ever think about marriage again? Sarah asked, her voice tentative. I looked at her, seeing the hope and vulnerability in her eyes. I do, I admitted. I've thought about it a lot, and I think I'm ready. Her smile was radiant, her eyes filling with tears. Me too, John. Me too. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of planning and anticipation. We decided on a small, intimate ceremony, surrounded by close friends and family. Emily was thrilled, her excitement contagious as she helped with the preparations. The day of the wedding dawned bright and clear, a perfect reflection of the new beginning we were celebrating. As I stood at the altar, watching Sarah walk down the aisle, I felt a surge of emotion. This was more than just a wedding. It was a testament to our journey, to the love and resilience that had brought us here. Emily stood by my side, her eyes shining with happiness. As Sarah reached us, I took her hand, feeling the strength and warmth of her love. The officiant spoke words of commitment and love, and we exchanged vows, promising to support and cherish each other through whatever life might bring. When it was time for the rings, Emily stepped forward, holding them with a solemn expression. These rings are a symbol of your love, she said, her voice steady. They remind us that no matter what happens, love is always worth fighting for. As I placed the ring on Sarah's finger, I felt a sense of completeness, a knowledge that, despite the pain of the past, we had built something beautiful and enduring. The reception was a joyous celebration, filled with laughter and love. Friends and family toasted to our happiness, their support and encouragement a testament to the strength of our new beginning. As the night wore on, Emily danced with her friends, her laughter filling the air. Later, as Sarah and I shared a quiet moment, watching the stars, I felt a deep sense of peace. The journey had been long and difficult, but it had brought us here, to this moment of happiness and love. I love you, Sarah, I said, my voice filled with emotion. I love you too, John, she replied, her eyes shining with tears. Thank you for believing in us, for fighting for this. We stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, the future stretching out before us like a promise. It wouldn't always be easy, but with love, determination, and the support of our family, we were ready to face whatever came next. As the stars twinkled above, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. For the lessons learned, for the strength found in adversity, and for the love that had brought us here. It was a new beginning, a chance to build a life filled with happiness and love. And I was ready to embrace it, one day at a time.